Somewhere right now, a 34-year-old with a good job, a decent apartment, and zero debt is doing the math on a napkin. She makes $91,000 a year. She has $11,000 in savings, and she just found out that if she wants to retire at 65 with the lifestyle she has today, she needs to have saved roughly $800,000 by then. She's not behind. She's not irresponsible. She's exactly on schedule for a system that was never designed to make this easy. That's the part nobody says out loud. Your 30s are sold to you as the getting serious decade. Save more. Invest earlier. Buy the house. Max the 401k. And the advice isn't wrong. But almost nobody tells you the one number that actually decides whether any of it works. We're going to get to that number. Stay with me. Here's why your 30s specifically matter more than any other decade, and it has nothing to do with willpower. It's about time. Cold, mechanical compounding time. Money invested at 25 has 40 years to grow. Money invested at 35 has 30. That's not a 10% difference. Depending on the return rate, that missing decade can cost you literally half your final balance. Not because you saved less, because the clock started later. And here's the twist that makes this decade so loaded. Your 30s are also when life sends the biggest bills. Weddings, kids, mortgage, maybe a parent who suddenly needs help. Your income is rising, sure, but so is everything trying to take a piece of it. So you're standing at the exact intersection where compounding rewards you the most for starting now, and life is doing everything possible to convince you to start later. That tension is the whole story of this video. Let's strip away the jargon and look at what building wealth actually is. Mechanically.it comes down to 4 levers. Just 4. Everything else is decoration. Lever 1, the gap. This is the distance between what you earn and what you spend. Not your salary. Not your savings account. The gap. You make $200,000 a year and spend 198 of it. Your gap is smaller than someone earning 60,000 and spending 40. Wealth isn't built from income. Built from the space you create underneath it. Lever 2, where the gap goes. Cash sitting in a checking account is not building wealth. It's losing to inflation quietly every single month while you're not looking. The gap has to move into something that grows: index funds, retirement accounts, real assets. Otherwise, you're just storing value while it slowly evaporates. Lever 3, time in the market. This is the one people misunderstand the most. It's not about picking the right moment. It's about how many years your money is allowed to sit there compounding without you touching it. A mediocre return over 30 years usually beats a great return over 10. Lever 4, protection, insurance, emergency funds, debt management. This lever doesn't grow your money, it stops a single bad month from wiping out 5 years of progress. Most financial disasters aren't caused by bad investments. They're caused by an unprotected gap, meeting an unexpected expense. For levers, gap, direction, time, protection. That's the entire system underneath every finance book you've ever seen. Simple, right? Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Everyone talks about the power of compound interest like it's a gift. It is, but it's a gift with an entry fee, and the entry fee is time. You don't get to negotiate on. Let's run real numbers because vague encouragement doesn't survive. Contact with a spreadsheet. Someone who invests $300 a month starting at age 25 at a 7% average annual return will have roughly $680,000 at 65. Someone who invests the exact same $300 a month, same return, but starts at 35 instead of 25, 1 decade later, ends up with around $340,000. Read that again. Half the decade. Half the money. Not 60%. Half. That's not a rounding error. That's the mechanism most financial content quietly skips because it's not motivational. It's a little bit brutal. And here's the part that turns this from uncomfortable to genuinely strange. The person who started at 35 didn't do anything wrong. They probably weren't lazy. They were finishing school or paying off debt or just didn't have $300 spare a month at 25 because rent ate it first. The math doesn't care about your reasons. Compounding isn't a moral reward system. It's physics with a dollar sign. So when someone tells you it's never too late to start, right, starting late still beats not starting. But they're also quietly not telling you what the cost of late actually was. That's not motivational content. That's math nobody wants to put in a thumbnail. Now let's talk about the noise. Because if you've opened any finance app or scrolled past any finance influencer in the last 2 years, you've absorbed a very specific fantasy. The fantasy goes like this. Find the right stock, the right crypto, the right side hustle, and you leapfrog the whole slow, boring process. Someone made 40% in a month. Someone quit their job. 31. Someone turned $5,000 into a house down. Payment trading options. Here's the reality sitting quietly underneath all of that noise. The overwhelming majority of people who build real, boring, durable wealth in their 30s do it through a shockingly unglamorous combination. Consistent saving, low-cost diversified investing, and not touching the money for a very long time. That's it. That's the whole secret, and it's been the secret since index funds existed. The irony is almost funny once you see it. The financial content that gets the most attention is the version that statistically works the least often. High-risk, high-drama strategies make for great video, thumbnails, and terrible retirement accounts. Meanwhile, the strategy that actually works, automate it, ignore it, let time do the labor, doesn't have a single viral moment in it. Nobody's clicking on "I did the same boring thing for 11 years and it worked." There's a quiet joke in personal finance. The best investors are often described as the ones who forgot they had an account or the ones who were technically dead. Because inactivity, not activity, is usually what wins. That's not a knock on ambition. Building a business, negotiating a higher salary, investing in real skills, those genuinely accelerate things. The problem is specifically the shortcuts, the ones sold as effortless. Those are the ones that quietly separate people from their money instead of growing it. So far this has been about numbers on a chart. Let's make it heavier, because the stakes here are not abstract. Your 30s are when most people take on the debt that will define the next 2 decades of their life, a mortgage, often the largest financial commitment they will ever make. Get the timing and structure wrong here, and you're not just losing money. You're potentially locking a percentage of every future paycheck into a decision made under pressure, made fast, made because a lease was ending or a baby was coming. And there's a second, quieter risk that almost nobody frames correctly: lifestyle creep. Your income in your 30s tends to rise faster than at any other point in your career. The dangerous part isn't the raise. It's what happens to the gap, that first lever. When the raise arrives, most people don't bank the increase. They absorb it. Nicer apartment, nicer car, restaurants instead of groceries. The gap that was supposed to widen stays exactly the same width, just funding a more expensive life instead of a wealthier future. This is the part where the system gets almost a little cruel, because it doesn't punish you immediately. You feel fine. Bills are paid. Nothing collapses. The cost of a flat gap doesn't show up as an emergency. It shows up 30 years later as a retirement account that's 40% smaller than it should have been, and by then, there's no decade left to fix it with. That's the actual danger of your 30s. It's not a crash. It's a slow leak that feels completely normal while it's happening. Now step back further, because this isn't just a personal finance story. It's a structural one. Pensions, the kind that guaranteed people a paycheck for life, have largely disappeared from the private sector. What replaced them? For 401ks, IRAs, personal investing, shifted the entire responsibility. For retirement planning from institutions onto individuals. That's a massive transfer of risk that happened quietly over about 40 years, and most people in their 30s today inherited it without ever being told the rules changed. At the same time, the cost of the traditional 30s milestones, home, childcare, healthcare, has outpaced wage growth in most major economies. So the system is simultaneously asking this generation to save more for their own future while charging them more just to live in the present. This is why just save more can sound almost insulting depending on who's saying it and to whom. For some people in their 30s, the math genuinely works with discipline and time. For others, the gap, lever one, is structurally too thin no matter how disciplined they are, because income hasn't kept pace with the cost of existing. That distinction matters because it changes what this video actually is. It's not a lecture about discipline. It's a description of a machine, one that rewards early starters, punishes delayed starters disproportionately, and was built on the assumption that most people can find a meaningful gap between income and expenses. For a lot of people, especially right now, that assumption is the whole problem. So here's where this leaves you. The 4 levers are real. Gap, direction, time, protection. They work. The math on compounding is real too, and it is exactly as unforgiving as it looked a few minutes ago. Starting at 30 beats, starting at 40. Starting at 40 beats, never starting. None of that is in dispute. But underneath the calculator, there's a question the system was never designed to answer for you. If the return on your money depends almost entirely on how early you started, and you didn't get to choose when you were born what your parents could give you or what your rent was the year you turned 25, then how much of building wealth is actually about decisions, and how much of it was already decided before you made a single one? The napkin math still says, start now, whatever now looks like for you. That part's not up for debate. The part that is up for debate is whether a system this dependent on timing should be the primary way an entire generation is expected to secure its future. That's not a question a spreadsheet can answer.